So we had, like Lonnie said, our next guest here, Tanya Zuckerbrot. She's a nutritionist. Tanya, welcome.
Hi,
I'm Steven. Nice to meet you. And we're talking about beating the winter blues.
Yeah.
Okay. So first off, what are the winter blues and why do people get them?
Well, it actually is a clinical condition where people become a lot less social, more irritable, and there are a few reasons that this occurs. One is that we don't go into the sun as much, and the sun makes our body produce feel-good hormones such as serotonin. So lack of sunlight and the cold, and it's also people get more sick. I mean, there's a bunch of reasons, but this is called seasonal affective disorder. It affects 25 million people.
So my question, seasonal affective disorder.
Even
Sad.
exactly.
Could they thought of a better name? Because
Pretty
it's
clever.
like, it's like, well, you have this, but you're
Somebody
sad.
was thinking.
Yeah. I mean, that was it, though.
No, it's a true clinical disorder. It affects women 4 times as often as men, though. So,
Okay. Oh, that was going to be one of my questions.
yeah.
Just reading my mind.
And, it's interesting because they say Seattle has the highest rate of suicide in the country because they have, like, the longest winters and the least amount of sunlight.
Yeah, wow. Now, what are some of these tips for someone to beat seasonal affective disorder?
Well, we wanted to give foods that were natural. We all know a lot of illegal substances boost our mood, but we wanted, to talk about ones which are natural that can, get your mood up and also to help fight immunity because also being sick is also depressing. If you think about in the summer, we're feeling more energetic, we're more healthy. So the foods that we discussed today were omega-3s. There's a study that showed people who don't get enough omega-3s suffer depression 2 times as often. Foods that naturally contain omega-3s are fatty fishes such as salmon and sardines, flaxseed, walnuts. Then we moved on to serotonin. You can't get serotonin from foods, but there are foods which contain an amino acid called tryptophan, which is a precursor to serotonin.
And we know what that is because that's the turkey, the turkey
Exactly.
drug.
After Thanksgiving, we're all like, sort of jovial, happy, relaxed. So turkey, cottage cheese, bananas, great source of tryptophan. Then we moved on to vitamin D, and there's a lot of news about vitamin D. Studies show that vitamin D is the panacea that ails us. Everything from, reducing the risk from cardiovascular disease to diabetes, but it also affects immunity and affects mood. Now, you only need 10 to 15 minutes in the sun to get enough vitamin D, but in these winter months, first of all, it's not very sunny, and 2, it's so cold, you're not going out into the sun.
Absolutely.
Now, it's really hard to get vitamin D from foods. The only foods that really contain vitamin D are milk and orange juice, and how much of those are we really consuming?
Right.
That's why vitamin D supplement is sort of becoming very common. Now, dietitians, our recommendation is always food first, but when it comes to vitamin D, it's almost impossible to get enough from food. So what you're looking for with vitamin D is probably 1,000 IU, which is, you could easily get that in a pill or liquid form.
So that's interesting that you say you recommend getting these different nutrients through food and not through supplements. So
Yeah.
why is that?
Well, supplements are just that. They're to supplement an imbalanced diet. They're not called replacements. It's not instead of food. And the efficacy of supplements has not been proven against foods to be superior. In fact, most studies are pointing to the fact that your body more readily absorbs vitamins and nutrients from food, and there are also other benefits from food, which is, you feel full, so therefore you're less likely to, eat other calories and reduce the risk for obesity. When you pop a supplement, you're getting the vitamin benefit, but you're not getting the joy of food, you're not getting the fullness of food.
Right.
So anything about supplements that people need to be aware of is that, say with vitamin D, so everywhere you read right now it's saying eat vitamin D, vitamin D, vitamin D. But it's not wise to, prescribe yourself just as much vitamin D as you want, because the American mentality tends to be, if a little good, a lot must be better.
Yeah, right.
But vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. So if you take it in excess of what your body needs, it's actually toxic, which can then lead to other more serious problems. So it's important to speak to your practitioner or find out what the guidelines are for the threshold for how much you should take, and just don't overdo it thinking.
So you can actually take more, like too much vitamin D.
There are 4 vitamins which are fat-soluble, which can lead to toxicity. Vitamins A, D, E, and K.
Okay.
The next vitamin that we talked about during the segment was vitamin C, which helps to boost immunity. Vitamin C is a water-soluble vitamin. So say you're taking 10,000 milligrams of vitamin C when your recommended amount is 1,000. In that case, you just end up urinating out the excess.
Oh.
So it's not toxic. It doesn't build up. You'll just have very expensive urine if you're spending all that money on supplements.
And what good is that?
I mean,
What good is that? Rick, you have a question from the chat room, I believe? Oh, you waved. Oh, oh, okay. Now, what about people who say they can they bring those lights in, those sun lamps? Are those a good remedy?
It is. The sunlight helps their body to naturally produce the vitamin D, and studies have shown that this vitamin D does help to boost your mood as well as to help fight immunity. Right. So getting 10 to 15 minutes of that, sunlight, even if it's, from a light box, right, exactly, does show to boost your mood.
Okay, now we have a question from the chat room. Go ahead, go for it, Rick.
From Bruce, who wants to know, if you work out, does it make sense to take increased doses of supplements?
Well, it depends how much you're working out and if you're getting the effects of the workout that other supplements can offer you. Working out is not necessarily going to give you more vitamin C, so it depends which supplements you need, Bruce. But as far as the benefits of exercise go, it certainly does help to boost immunity. A study showed that people who exercise only 40 minutes per day actually experience fewer colds in the winter. The other good thing about exercising outdoors, like say you take your lunch hour, go for a 40-minute walk, you are going to get some sunlight, which will then help produce that vitamin D. So if you're exercising outdoors, maybe you don't need the vitamin D, so that's a perfect example. But other nutrients, exercise is not a replacement for.
Good question, Bruce. Now, there is a connection between our moods and our immune system?
Yes. People who are more depressed tend to get sick more often. And whether that's psychosomatic or just the fact that when you are more depressed, your immune system suffers, making you more susceptible to the common cold. Science is still looking into that, but the other thing that studies have shown is that people have a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you're in a bad mood and you think you're going to get sick, you're more likely to get sick. And it affects the people who, once they are sick, studies have shown that people believe they're going to get well are more likely to get well than those who are convinced that they're not. So mood, immunity, they're
all intertwined. Now, is there an opposite of like the winter blues? Is there like people who get depressed in the summer? Because I know I prefer the winter. I actually like the winter, fall months.
Yeah, you're alone with that. Most people.
I'm a weirdo. I'm a weirdo, basically.
No, not so much. But most people report more depression in the winter months than in the summer months. But it's something to look into.
Okay. Now we still have some time, yeah, right? Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, we're gonna get to one more question here with Tanya. Now, hold on here. So, okay. So you mentioned this happens to more women than it is to men. So, is there people in parts? You talked about Seattle. Are there other parts of the country where people are more susceptible to this type of thing?
I would just think where you have shorter days, so perhaps Alaska, and less sunlight. I mean, the sunlight really has been proven to have a really massive effect on people's moods and immunity levels.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Tanya, thank you so much. Tanya Zuckerbrot, nutritionist, talking to us about beating the winter blues, and I'm sure you can find out some of those tips on CBS.com. Tanya, thank you so much.